We'll start by tracing a circle in the center of our paper. I'm imagining that my clouds are all coming into the center in the shape of a V, and I'm allowing my pencil to organically kind of draw those in. I'm using very light pressure with my pencil so that my lines do not show up very dark. Imagine your rays come evenly from the center outwards, so I'm kind of using a clock method to section off where my rays will come out. I'm using a size 10 round brush. Avoiding the very center circle and keeping it white, I'm going to take some clear water and mop in a wet area that will allow my color to bleed in. I'm going to use my Van Gogh palette, which is a student grade palette. I highly recommend it. It was around $120 and very worth it. I go in with the orange and immediately decide that it was too dark, but I hug the center circle with the deepest of the tone so that it makes my white of the sun stand out even stronger. Using Indian yellow, I saturate my brush and I start going in on those diagonal cloud lines and just organically start placing in dollops of color. I allow the water to flow kind of wherever it decides to go so that my lines do not start out crisp. Clean water on my brush helps fuzz out those harsh edges. I very carefully introduce phthalo blue to the corners. You'll notice that if you spend too much time around the yellow, that the blue and the yellow will mud together into a green, and we do not want that to happen. I'm tapping a few times to encourage some cloud blooming, and then I'm going into that clock face of lines to try to bring out those rays again so I can see them. I'm tapping them with a paper towel to pull some of the blue out and create a little bit of a line. I'm going to blotch in some Quin Purple Red into these open areas of the clouds. Certain areas will have more water saturation and others will have more pigment saturation, which will kind of give us that uneven, cloudy appearance. I definitely want to be careful not to lose any of my yellow. This area is still wet, so I need to be careful not to lose all that color. You'll notice the downward point of the V of the formation of my clouds kind of overlaps each other. While my Quin Purple Red is still wet, I go in with my permanent blue violet and I darken up some of these areas. If the paper is still wet underneath, you'll notice that it won't go on in harsh lines and it will fuzz into the color beneath. So you get these beautiful blooms of color that kind of blend together. You want to be careful when layering the purple and the yellow because they will gray each other out if you're not careful. I clean my brush again and I go into the permanent red light. It's a very darkish red orange. I'm being very careful not to blend them together. This red is in between the purple and the yellow, so it plays well with both. I'm again encouraging the inconsistent pigmentation, adding more water in some areas and adding more color in others. I find the best time to layer cloudy colors is when the previous color beneath it is nearly dry, has broken through the paper, but is still wet. You'll find your colors will be more vibrant when your paper is more dry. We're going to take some time to dry so that we can add on another layer. If you've made it this far in my video, go into the comments and tell me a joke. I'm grabbing more of that blue. I'm not creating the rays with the blue, I'm creating around the rays. Oop, I don't like that one. I'm gonna grab a paper towel and blotch that out, blend it out, throw another cloud in there because that really was not what I wanted to do. My layers underneath are beginning to dry up, so I can go back in with my Quin Purple Red and create much more vibrant edges. If I find my lines are too harsh, I just take a clean brush with clean water and fuzz out my edges so that I don't have cartoony looking clouds. I want the highlights of my clouds heavily yellow. I'm going in and tracing those lines that I drew. And I grabbed the wrong yellow. That one's a little too green. I want a cloud to cover the front of my sun just slightly, so that is why I introduced water over the surface. Now I'm trying to get these purple sections to bloom with some clear water. It'll create a cauliflower effect if you leave clear water over a puddle of another color. After I let the water soak into the paper just slightly, I go back in with Indian yellow and go over the face of the sun. I'm tapping in a little bit of the perm red light in this area as well. A little bit more dry time. My tape is starting to peel up. Guess what's going to happen later? We've created a lot of puddles with a lot of water saturation, so it does take quite a bit of time to dry. Eventually I get impatient and I go in with a paper towel. I start blowing the puddles around to try to encourage some of the pigment to move in a cauliflower fashion as well, and ultimately I end up blotching some off. I want to play around with some white, so I grab some P.H. Martin's bleed proof white and I go around those pencil lines of my sun. I'll end up saving some of that orange again, don't worry. You'll notice my blue was still wet, so it dragged into that line. The Dr. P.H. Martin's is an opaque, almost paint-like consistency, but it is still water soluble. I don't know why they call it bleed proof, because if you get it wet, it bleeds. I don't want it harsh or cartoony. Those are only supposed to give an idea of where my rays are through my clouds, so I'm blotching the excess off. I don't want a harsh transition between the sun and the sky, so I blend out a little bit more of the white. I'm taking care to make sure that I don't have any pencil lines coming through the sun. I feel like this ray down here is fat and then skinny, so I'm just fixing the taper of it. Now that the base layer is almost dry, I'm going in a little bit more with that purple. I'm allowing it to go over the top of some of the rays so it appears as though they're shining through the clouds. I use varying types of pressure as I paint. I make sure that sometimes my brush is pressed deep down and sometimes it's just hovering above the surface. This makes it so my lines are unpredictable. I don't want a straight line and I don't want it to look cartoony, so sometimes my brush is being pressed down, sometimes it is hovering just at the tip of the surface, and the color is never applied in just a straight line. You may find tapping motion to be the best for you. Strengthening my yellow once again. And bringing in a little bit more of that perm red light. And then give your layers some time to dry. I could have used masking fluid, but I like to cheat. This is a Posca acrylic marker. Hi, Mom. If my sun is the source of my light, I'm going to go on the top of some of these cloud clusters and give myself a really harsh highlight. Just like with my brush, I'm using various degrees of pressure and I'm making sure that my lines are not straight. I'm going in a little bit thicker in some areas and thinner than others. Sometimes you'll find that there's a spot that needs a little extra definition and you can use the pen to kind of hit it there. I really like the highlights on top of the Indian yellow. And right about now, my pen started to fail and create a pooling at the tip, so I was having a bleeding issue with my paint marker. So I stopped using it the way I was and started just dragging the paint from this little pool I made in the corner. Normally, I really like these pens. This isn't typically something that happens. You can really bring in a lot of detail with these pens. If I wanted to make this more comic style or cartoony, I could draw some of my sun rays with this pen as well, and that would be really interesting. This is my favorite part, peeling off the tape. Look at that clean edge. Son of a... Of course. Now I'm going to have to glue that down. And then, of course, you have to sign it. I always put the year. And there we have it. If you like what you saw, go ahead and leave me a comment and subscribe.